Welcome to the Personal Injury Law Show. This is a show that talks about everything current in the law of personal injuries and relevant to you, the viewer. My name's Tony Carbone, personal injury lawyer, 30 years experience. With me tonight I've got Joh Kirby, who's the accredited law specialist in workers' compensation at a major law firm. Good evening, John.
Hi Tony, hi viewers, hi Viv.
Hi.
And also the marketing guru, former lawyer, Vivienne Ryan from Gravia Media. Good evening, Viv.
Hello Tony, John, good evening viewers.
Tonight, viewers, stay tuned. We've got a riveting episode with the CEO of the Law Foundation, Joh Kirby.
But before we get on to the show, I'm really excited about it. You're highly decorated tonight. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with your lapel, Tony.
John, these pins represent, two of them are Pancare, which is a trust set up to research pancreatic, liver, biliary and stomach cancers. It's a New Austin Hospital Research Centre, Living Newton, John. The other one's Bully Zero. Now, that's the one that's been set up to educate the community to ensure that we stamp out bullying, because it's causing a lot of suicides and things like that. So, and viewers, I'm part of both boards. So
they're very
that's
important.
Why I'm wearing it.
And very important causes, Tony.
But Vivienne says I'm lit up like a beacon, aren't I?
Well, we love that. We love to support these wonderful associations. So well done, Tony.
So go to the website on both of them and make sure you donate to both charities.
Tony, before we get into tonight's topic, what's in the news?
John, there's been a lot of stories. The one that's really caught my eye is this one about the safety of doctors, nurses and hospital staff, Viv. What do you think about all this?
Well, it's really upsetting, to be perfectly honest. There's been a huge spike in violence in the emergency departments across hospitals across Victoria. One in particular that happened in February of this year was a neurosurgeon who was in attendance at the hospital, going to work and was stabbed.
Yeah.
14 times.
John, what worries me about this is there some risk of the standard of our care dropping off because the hospital staff are going to be more concerned about their safety than ensuring that the people that come in are actually properly treated?
Tony, this neurosurgeon, very well respected, Michael Wong, he was stabbed. He himself says there's no safeties, there's no appropriate safeties. You know, stab surgeon demands safe wards, Tony. Now, there's no separate access for doctors to go into these hospitals.
Yep.
It's ludicrous.
Yeah, it's not just doctors, it's also nurses as well. The research has recently been conducted in Victoria over 5,000 different independent medical practitioners, and it indicates that there was over 70% of those particular nurses that have been exposed to violent attacks whilst at work. And the issue that's been raised by Dr. Wong is that since this incident has happened to him specifically in February, nothing has been done to counter these violent attacks.
John, Viv, is the best way to counter all this to have actual physical security?
I think
People
so.
there.
I think so, yes, Tony.
It just means an extra cost that we need. We really need.
Look, and it's unfortunate, John and Tony, because it's become a real political agenda. It's what Labor's going to do, what Liberals are going to do. Ultimately, we need to protect the health and safety of our workers who are looking after people, saving lives, and whoever implements it is really irrelevant. There's been huge calls for safety officers to be present in the lobby of hospitals.
There should be.
And I don't think that's
I think that's right.
But seemingly the government are putting it back on the hospitals themselves to be able to fund these things.
Well,
the
employer is liable to provide a safe workplace. So it is their responsibility.
Well, Dr. Gawan got lucky because he survived, but next time round we won't be so lucky. Look, we might have to do a full episode on this. I think
I think
warrants
so.
it.
Just before we move on, what sort of actions does the medical staff have for compensation? I mean, do they have
They've got
any
all their
claims?
rights under the workers' compensation legislation, Viv, which means you can sue for pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, loss of income, past and future, and
exactly.
medical treatment.
Exactly.
So they're pretty big claims.
Oh, yes.
Now, Viv, you're a mother. This lawsuit that was brought on by Darcy's mum Darcy Freeman, the one that was thrown off the Westgate Bridge.
Look, I still
Shocking.
remember the day that I turned on the radio as I was leaving my work in King Street, and I think my world actually changed along with anybody else who'd heard of the circumstances surrounding this tragic event. You may recall the father of, I think it was 3 children at the time. He was so he was so outside of himself, and only he would ever know what was going on when he stopped his car on the top of the Westgate Bridge and took his 4-year-old daughter and threw her over the Westgate Bridge.
The sad thing is when you're dealing with these family matters, rationality goes out the door, John. And I don't know if he's trying to get back at his wife, who knows, but...
Look, clearly he was not of sane mind.
This 4-year-old
Yeah.
So
child...
So the court action by Peter Barnes was against the government, against Vic Roads in particular, for not ensuring that fences were appropriate and on the Westgate Bridge.
Well, the sad thing about it is the government initially accepted the advice of Vic Roads where $10 million to set up the barriers was too high, and now they're going to spend, they've spent $20 million.
Subsequently.
Which is bizarre.
So this claim is now settled, Tony.
Yes,
so
it is.
she has been vindicated in her position that these fences should have been there in the first place. And now, as the statistics show, that 85% of suicides, has reduced.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, the
Really?
statistics alone show that the $20 million we've spent is well spent, isn't it?
Oh, look, obviously the circumstances around this case are tragic, but if we are to address what we're talking about now, about this particular case, it was a civil case that was brought about separately to the trial against the father. So clearly there's a cap with compensation that she's able to receive in this civil case. And it talks about the fact that there was a foreseeable risk, and that is why she was able to claim successfly in this compensation.
When they've already turned their mind to the issue of putting up barriers, and there've been discussions about it over many years, I mean, they're never going to win on liability.
So they didn't disclose the amount of compensation. I understand there's a cap.
It's settled out of court.
What sorts of money could we likely...
Well, the cap is $370,000 for pain and suffering.
Would have been close to the max, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Let's keep moving because time flies. Racist word taunts. This fellow's been
Shocking.
He's copped allegations of he's a gorilla. This is bizarre.
About his
isn't it?
sexuality.
Ethiopian born.
So this gentleman was working with a security company based out of Victoria, subject to a lot of racial taunting, amongst which was being called a gorilla, being called
Black magic,
terrorist
slave.
over a period of 8 years. He then took the case to the
VCAT.
tribunal.
Yep.
And he now claims that he's been wronged because he was sacked as a consequence of that. Now, does this come under the general protections rule or unfair dismissals?
The VCAT one's a separate proceeding, but I'd be going general protections, John, because
That also, yes.
I'll tell you what, it opens
Yes.
the door to some serious claims.
So at the moment, these are all allegations. The
Yep.
case is yet to be proved. But it just goes to show, Tony, that any worker that suffers this type of bullying, this type of abuse at work, has rights at law, either in the federal court or at VCAT, Tony.
Yep. And the thing about it is I've got one exactly like this, Viv, an Ethiopian fellow who's been probably worse than this.
Yes.
A representative of the security company say that he wasn't sacked as a consequence of his action in the tribunal. He said he was sacked as a consequence of his inability to comply with his work requirements. So, look, it is before the tribunal, so we need to be very mindful of that.
We've got to go to a sponsors break. Stay tuned, viewers. After the break, we're going to have Joh Kirby from the Law Foundation. Viewers, welcome back to the show. Tonight we're very fortunate to have Joh Kirby. Joh is the Executive Director of Victoria Law Foundation, and you established it, didn't you, Joh?
I didn't establish it, but I've been there for 8 years.
Okay. Now, what does the Victoria Law Foundation stand for?
Well, look, we're the only statutory body that really focuses on educating the community in the law. We really want Victorians to be able to understand the law so they can use it to improve their lives, act on their legal issues. We know lots of people do nothing when they have a legal problem, and so we try to make it a little bit easier for Victorians to do that.
And you've done that by establishing a website called Everyday Law. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Everyday Law was launched in May this year. And what we did was we knew, the research shows us that most people don't do anything when they have a legal problem. So we really tried to throw out all the ego and perceptions about the law and really look at what the public wanted, how they related. We know that things like popular culture, TV series are really popular, so there's an interest in the law. But the way that it was being delivered in the past wasn't really working.
Too legalistic.
Too legalistic, too complicated, filled with words that people didn't understand, filled with, you know, lawyers talking to other lawyers rather than talking to the community. So we really tried to break it down. We know that 50% of the population have trouble with literacy. So if you're writing like a lawyer, you're not going to reach out to those people.
And I guess you're also educating the lawyers to ensure that when they do talk to these clients, that they dumb it down a little bit, for want of a better word, so they will be understood. Isn't that correct, Joh?
Yeah, definitely. That's a strong focus of the foundation. We really want to teach lawyers to understand their audience, what people understand. We don't think if you're a lawyer and your client doesn't understand what you're talking about, they really can't make proper decisions based on the information you're providing them with. So a lot of our work is trying to teach people how to communicate better.
And who have you modelled this program on? Has anyone else done this before?
A couple of years ago, I got a Churchill Fellowship and did a world tour, which was really interesting and a great treat, looking at what other people were doing around the world. I think there's a lot of interest in this area, but I think what we're doing is really innovative, and we're getting a lot of interest both in Australia and overseas for our work.
Viv, do you know what a Churchill Fellowship is?
I have no idea.
Winston Churchill established all these, I don't know, trusts and things like that, and they're given out to different people to pursue different things.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
Yeah,
I
and that's what
encourage-
this is.
And it's not academic, so it's more about passion and changing the way Australians work. So it's a great opportunity, and I went away for 7 weeks, so a great treat.
So, Joh, since the launch of Everyday Law, the website, what are some of the more common inquiries you're getting from the public?
They're really varied. We know people are interested in things like family breakup, divorce, neighbourhood disputes, which is one of the most common consumer issues, accidents and compensation.
I was gonna ask you that.
Yeah, big issue. So a whole range. And really, when we designed the website, we did a lot of research into what were the most common issues that came up and tried to structure the website around that.
And Viv, in addition to the website, there's publications. We've got
Brochures.
The Law Week, which is very big every year, isn't it, Joh?
Yeah.
Law Week.
I mean, these are all the things, you know, the website is one element of the work that the foundation does. We also, as you say, run Law Week. We try to bring some interest to the law by running both entertainment and also information sessions. And we've had great success getting people to come out. We open the courts up so you can come and go around the court, find a little bit about it, visit the Supreme Court dungeons, which are very interesting. They've been there, you know, for 150 years. So lots of great, exciting things happen there.
What about the Magistrates Court ones? They're very active.
Yeah, they are really active. I mean, I think, you know, the Magistrates Court looks so different and less kind of, it's got that 1960s feel to it, but going inside's really interesting, and it's where most legal matters in Victoria are heard, so it's definitely worth going and having a look at. In relation to our publications, we produce a whole range of really the kind of legal problems that hopefully most people deal with, which is neighbourhoods, dogs and cats, parking disputes, the most common things, but cause people a lot of angst. You know,
Yep.
if you get a parking fine and you don't think you should have it, how do you deal with it? What is the process?
In my past travels, Viv, when I was a criminal lawyer, I visited the old Jogga H division. Have you
Wow,
ever been
it's
there?
going back? No.
Not that far.
That
What was your question?
My question was about how I then, you know, if I want to dispute a parking fine, how do I go about doing that?
Well, you can write to your council. We recommend if you're in a parking spot and you think it's wrong, take some photos, make sure you take some notes so that you've got some evidence to support your claim. And then there's processes from there once you've entered into that original letter.
And witnesses are good. I always like witnesses.
Yeah.
Let's go on. Viv,
Yes.
the laws in our country, where do they mainly come from?
Well, there's the Australian Constitution, which was created many
1901.
years ago, 1901. And then you have federal and Victorian legislation, and then there's, what's the other ones?
The other one
Is the common law, which is judge-made law. So, yeah.
Do you know when the common law was established?
No, I have no idea
It
when
was
the common law.
1215, the Magna Carta.
What's
You
the
know what
Magna Carta?
is?
Well, the anniversary of it, I think, is this year, isn't it? Or next
it
year?
is.
It's a big year for the Magna Carta.
The Magna Carta, viewers, is where the king at the time in England decided to bring all the laws of the different counties together so that when you went to court, instead of getting a different verdict or decision for different people, they started to follow decisions, and that way you got a fairer result for each person. So it's precedent. It was a precedent system, and that was what the Magna Carta was. Joh, has your organisation resulted in the law being changed, or is it more about educating people about what is out there in terms of the law?
At the moment, I think one thing I could say about Australia is that we really are leaders in plain language. So maybe we don't need the law. Other locations like the United States have introduced laws about plain language in writing for government organisations. But I think at the moment we're kind of doing well at self-regulating. We just need to keep focusing on that.
Viv, there was once this thing out there that lawyers made it complicated because that justified their charges. Is that a misconception, or is there some truth to that?
I believe absolutely the opposite, and Joh will probably concur with me. I think ultimately that lawyers, and we can talk about the definition of lawyers, barristers and solicitors in a moment, they actually alleviate stress, because some research has been recently conducted to, not surprisingly, demonstrate that the more complex and the length of your matter, the more stress that occurs. So when you actually seek the advice of a lawyer, they can actually break down the complexities of your claim. So when you're more informed, you're less likely to suffer stress.
Well, on that note, Viv, we've got to go to a sponsors break, and after the break, viewers, we're going to explain to you different roles of lawyers and what Joh does with her foundation. Welcome back to the show. During the break, one of the viewers sent through an email asking us a bit more about the Constitution. Now, what is the Constitution, Joh?
Well, the Constitution's really the basis of our legal system. It tells us who can make what laws about what. As Vic touched on, we have both state and federal laws, and the Constitution says what laws the federal government can make and what laws the state governments can make.
And the best example of that, Joh and Viv, is the castle.
The castle.
Where
that's what I was saying before.
Dennis
It's the general vibe.
Dennis
It's the vibe.
Denuto took the case to court to show that the government had acted outside its powers. It was unconstitutional.
Excellent.
But he couldn't explain it that good, so he kept saying, it's the vibe, Your Honour. And it's in the Constitution, and it's section 51. So that's why you had to get a raw lawyer.
Excellent. And we went straight to the pool room, didn't we?
Joh, give us some examples of why you require a lawyer. Why do you require a lawyer?
Look, I think the law is complicated, not because lawyers make it complicated, but it's a whole system of managing disputes within our society. There's lots of disputes, there's lots of laws. It's a very specialist area. Research shows that people that have lawyers are more satisfied with the outcome of their case than people that don't. So I think, the everyday law is really about giving people a first step so they feel empowered to go and talk to a lawyer with confidence and ask questions, because I think that's a big,
barrier.
It's a big barrier.
So what are the other barriers that you feel that the general public have against going to seeing a lawyer? If they have a claim, you said earlier, a lot of people don't actually seek the advice of a lawyer. They don't take a stand. They don't do anything about a potential claim that they might have. what are some of the common barriers for
They're
people
worried
to
about
not
money, aren't they,
take
Jo?
I think
on a
money
lawyer?
is a big issue.
Yeah, money's a big issue.
There are several options out there for people who can't afford a lawyer. The Everyday Law website has a great legal directory which lists different types of legal services that you can use, but also how to find lawyers and get, some free advice through the Law Institute. But I think that it can actually cost people money if they don't seek legal advice early on, because if you let a matter get out of hand, often the costs get out of hand and you might lose opportunity.
That's a very interesting point, Jo and Viv. Yesterday I bumped into a fellow who sued someone for $25,000. He's already spent $50,000 and it doesn't look like he's going to get his $25,000. So what I said to him is, one of the things as a lawyer that we do, Viv, is make sure that before we take a litigation on, we've got to make sure it's viable. You don't want these sharks out there that just go to court because they want to make money. They've got to have the interest of the client at heart, isn't that correct, Jo?
That's right. I think there's a big difference between what the law actually says and what the community thinks the law should say. So it's important to make sure you understand what the law says and what your legal rights really are, because you can get caught up in the emotion of a case and that's not a good thing.
And the old adage that if you're acting for yourself, you're really a fool, aren't you?
Well, absolutely, because a lot of cases don't actually go to trial, which is where there's a huge amount of expense and stress. A lawyer can actually help you navigate through a very complex system and oftentimes expedite the settlement of a case, which therefore helps, appease any sort of stress and also, enables you to move on with your life. So.
Jo, one of the main reasons why you should see a lawyer is because, let's say for argument's sake, you're contesting a parking fine. There's time limits in terms of lodging the actual notice.
Exactly.
So the lawyers understand procedure.
Exactly.
If you're pursuing a compensation claim, you've got X amount of time to lodge an application. If you're pursuing, let's say, there's a family law dispute, you've got time limits again. There might be a neighbourhood dispute about a fence. The legislation says you've got to do it within a certain time frame. So viewers, one of the things you've got to be careful of is it's not only about understanding how to decipher and interpret the law, but where people do stumble is time limits and procedures and all those sorts of constraints. And you find that if you try and do it yourself, you can't possibly understand it.
No.
And then when you do consult a lawyer, the horse is bolted.
Exactly.
It's too hard to go backwards and say, Your Honour, my client didn't have the services of a lawyer and didn't understand procedures. You've just, at that point in time, you've missed the boat, haven't you, Viv?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You might as well try and catch another plane. It's too late there too.
Well, it's really sad that people don't access all of these things that they can potentially take advantage of.
Jo, how do you fund your organisation, which is pretty important?
We get funded through the Legal Services Board Public Purpose Fund. That's the interest on solicitor trust account. So it's kind of money goes into trust, interest it pays for legal aid, the Law Reform Commission and also ourselves. So that's the main form of funding for us.
I'm glad you brought that up because viewers, I want to highlight one thing. Any money that's in our trust account, that is a lawyer's trust account, the interest does not go to the lawyer. So if the money's been sitting there for a year, don't think for 1 minute the lawyer's getting the interest. It goes to the Law Society, who then distributes it to organisations like Jo's. So lawyers do not hold on to money unnecessarily because the interest does not go to them.
Oftentimes we're asked, what's the difference between a lawyer, a barrister and a solicitor? Jo, would you like to answer that question? Or should I ask Tony?
I can answer
Well,
that.
he's a solicitor. You can't answer that.
I can answer that, yeah. Look, a lawyer basically generally sees a client, prepares a case, and then if they can't present it themselves, they give it to a specialist, which is a barrister, who appear in court more often than not. The barrister also every now and then just does check documentation that's been drafted by lawyers just to give it a once-over to make sure that it's up to scratch.
But
So
they're all
that's
lawyers, aren't
We're
they?
all lawyers.
They're all
Yeah.
lawyers.
When you
Solicitors,
graduate-
Legal
barristers.
practitioners.
Legal practitioners.
Well, when you graduate out of uni, it used to be a barrister and solicitor,
Yeah.
and now the term is legal practitioner. Yeah. So you can practice all around the country.
So
Jo,
Jo,
sorry,
go
Viv.
ahead.
We obviously see these pins I'm wearing.
Yes.
I'm here trying to raise money
Yes.
for the charities because I'm part of the boards. You obviously would like the public to donate money to your organisation too, because that means you can do more, correct?
Well, we love to see them support our projects, yes.
And give us an example of a project you've got going at the moment.
Well, obviously there's Everyday Law. We also take education programs out to rural and regional Victoria for VCE legal studies students. We know that most rural and regional communities are disadvantaged. They can't get into the CBD to find out about the legal system.
Yes.
And so we try and take programs out there. We have judges speaking, we have barristers, lawyers, members of government go out and talk to those students. It's a really fantastic
I'll come out there
opportunity.
and talk to them.
We'd love you to come. That would be
Beautiful.
fantastic.
I'd love to do
And
it.
I'd love to hear from you.
So what's
Love to do
next
it.
for the Victoria Law Foundation?
Well, next Monday we're launching a new corporate website, which that is a big event. It's going to provide better access to our services for our stakeholders and partners. Everyday Law is our community focus, and our new website is going to be a great opportunity for everyone else.
Joe, is there any other comments you'd like to add before we go?
No, it'll go and visit Everyday Law website, so that's everyday.org.au. And also visit the Foundation's website, victorialawfoundation.org.au, and find out more about the law.
I'd like to thank you for coming on board, Joe. And Viv, as always,
Always
pleasure.
a pleasure, Tony.
And viewers, thanks for watching. Go to our website, go to Twitter, go to Facebook. Stay tuned for future episodes, and always remember to stay safe.